They trusted them with their most sensitive business deals and personal secrets, but these respected Hollywood attorneys were systematically embezzling millions from their famous clients, leaving legends penniless while living in mansions bought with stolen money. The man who betrayed John Wayne's image. John Wayne, the cinematic icon of American fortitude, was betrayed not by an enemy, but by his trusted personal lawyer, who spent decades earning his confidence just to steal his family's inheritance. The betrayal began in the late 1960s, orchestrated by a man who had earned Wayne's absolute trust. This attorney was privy to every detail of Wayne's complex financial empire, which stretched beyond films into oil leases, real estate, and cattle ranching. The lawyer systematically began siphoning funds through complicated shell corporations and inflated invoicing for non-existent services. The deception was so meticulous that for years, Wayne's own accountants failed to notice the money flowing out through hidden legal fees and fictional investment losses. The attorney managed Wayne's will and established his children's trusts, giving him ultimate access. What made this betrayal so profound was the way it targeted the Duke's sense of honor. Wayne valued loyalty above all else, and this man had been inside the family circle for years. By the 1970s, the extent of the theft was staggering, pilfering millions of dollars, earmarked for his children and his own medical care as he struggled with illness. When the embezzlement came to light, it was not merely a financial blow, it was a deeply personal wound. Wayne, whose reputation was built on his ability to fight and win, found himself in a prolonged and humiliating legal battle against a former friend. The financial losses were eventually recovered only partially, but the loss of trust was permanent. The emotional toll was immense, forcing the proud star to face his own vulnerability. The man, who had been the cinematic symbol of self-reliance, had been brought low by the one person he had relied upon for protection. The image of the Duke, strong and unyielding, masked a star whose generosity made him an easy target for calculated duplicity. Yet, for some stars, that financial duplicity was layered onto a life already fractured by exploitation. Judy Garland, The Final Theft. The story of Judy Garland is one already stained by exploitation, beginning in her childhood at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. But even after escaping the tyranny of the studio system, her financial struggles continued, tragically culminating in a final, agonizing betrayal by a man entrusted with her adult affairs. Garland's life was a cycle of massive earnings, followed by devastating losses, often due to mismanagement, crippling taxes, and the simple fact that she rarely controlled her own money. In the late 1960s, as her health declined and her personal vulnerability increased, she turned to a highly recommended financial manager who promised to stabilize her remaining assets and manage her final concert tour earnings. Instead, this lawyer saw not an icon to protect, but a wounded woman to plunder. He manipulated her fragile emotional state, gaining power of attorney over her accounts and systematically liquidating her remaining assets and earnings. He allegedly intercepted funds intended for a European tour that would have paid off her immediate debts, rerouting the considerable sums to his own holding corporations. This left Garland constantly hounded by creditors, forcing her into an unsustainable cycle of performance just to stay ahead of the bills. The money disappeared into offshore accounts controlled by the attorney instead of paying her crushing tax debts. The theft, amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars, a king's ransom at the time, left the legendary performer nearly destitute during her final years. The betrayal ensured that even her modest last earnings did not reach her or her family. It was a cruel, calculated act against a woman who gave the world so much joy, but was never allowed to find stability. When she passed away in August of 1969, the scandal surrounding her pauperized estate became public, revealing the sickening truth that even at the end of her life, she was a victim of callous exploitation. Her daughter, Liza Minnelli, was left dealing with the fallout, fighting for years to recover control over Garland's artistic rights from the very people who had abandoned her in life. The Bogart estate, honor, betrayal, and the stolen millions. Humphrey Bogart, the cynical, principled hero of films like Casablanca, left behind a legacy meant to secure the future of his wife, Lauren Bacall, and their young family. Yet, the integrity that defined Bogart's screen persona was violently contrasted by the lack of honor displayed by his own legal counsel. Following Bogart's passing in 1957, his longtime attorney was placed in charge of managing the Bogart estate and the considerable income generated by his films, intellectual property, and investments. This attorney was a trusted guest at their home and a constant presence during Bogart's final illness. The lawyer, leveraging the complexity of the estate's holdings and Bacall's grief, began an elaborate scheme of self-dealing and embezzlement. He sold off valuable property at below-market rates to companies he secretly controlled and pocketed the difference. He manipulated royalty payments, diverting hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to the estate. This scheme targeted the core asset, the residual income from Bogart's film classics, which was supposed to be a lifetime stream of revenue. The attorney created false bookkeeping entries, suggesting the films were earning less internationally, thereby masking the money he was diverting. When Lauren Bacall began to question the erratic financial reports, she uncovered a vast network of deception. The resulting legal battle was ugly and prolonged, forcing her to expend considerable energy fighting a man who was supposed to be her shield. The irony was palpable. The man who embodied Hollywood's moral anti-hero was betrayed by the greedy, smooth operator his characters would have despised. The Bogart family eventually recovered a portion of the stolen fortune, but the violation of trust left a scar. The greatest shame was that Bacall had to publicly expose details of the estate, something Bogart had always guarded fiercely, just to bring the dishonorable lawyer to justice. Marlene Dietrich, the shadow over the icon of elegance. Marlene Dietrich cultivated an image of European sophistication, intellectual sharpness, and complete control. She managed her career with an iron will, demanding respect and wielding financial influence rare for a female star. It is a shock to realize that even Dietrich, the epitome of self-possession, was ultimately cheated by a supposedly dependable legal advisor. Later in her career, after the glamorous film roles gave way to a successful, globe-trotting concert career, Dietrich employed a close circle of business managers and lawyers to handle her immense international income. One attorney, an expert in international tax law, became indispensable to her complicated finances. For years, she relied implicitly on his advice, trusting him to handle foreign currency exchanges and complex tax arrangements essential to her lifestyle. What she didn't realize was that he was systematically skimming a percentage off every major payment, concealing the thefts through a maze of foreign bank accounts. The thefts accelerated during her time in Europe, where she was less physically able to review detailed US-based reports. The lawyer exploited complex legal jurisdictions, claiming fictional fees for coordinating European and American tax authorities. His actions resulted in major discrepancies that nearly led to criminal investigations into Dietrich's own tax compliance. The amounts were substantial, totaling millions by the time the scheme was discovered. The revelation was deeply humiliating for the famously proud star. It exposed a fundamental weakness in her otherwise impeccable self-management, her trust. When the betrayal was confirmed, Dietrich, who had faced down Nazis, was emotionally devastated. The financial loss was secondary to the feeling of being personally mocked. It forced the already reclusive icon into deeper isolation, reinforcing her belief that the world was ultimately untrustworthy. She spent the remainder of her life trusting only a tiny handful of people, viewing every business proposition with intense skepticism, a cold defense mechanism against further personal violation. The silent film star who died penniless. The Golden Age was built upon the foundations laid by the great stars of the silent era. These pioneers earned colossal, unprecedented fortunes, often receiving $5,000 a week when the average laborer earned barely 30. One such star, the forgotten icon of melodrama, who once earned 50 times the average weekly wage, found his wealth vanishing not through poor investments or the crash of 1929, but through the deliberate, cruel machinations of his own attorney. This star had accumulated a genuine fortune in films, real estate, and art. However, he struggled immensely with the transition to sound, and his career plummeted. In his declining years, he entrusted his remaining wealth, still a considerable sum, to a lawyer who promised to manage it carefully for his retirement. Instead, the lawyer saw an aging, vulnerable client, isolated from the studio system, whose personal affairs could be plundered with impunity. The attorney systematically liquidated the star's assets, fabricating losses and selling property to himself under false names. The most grievous thefts involved selling off the star's unique collection of early cinema memorabilia and his valuable Hollywood Hills property, all while assuring the star that the assets were simply underperforming and required restructuring. The lawyer fabricated a paper trail of fake loans and defaulted notes to justify the disappearances. The full extent of the betrayal only emerged posthumously. Despite the millions he had earned and the thousands of hearts he had moved, the star passed away in relative obscurity, his final bank statements showing only a meager few $100s. The theft was not just money. It was the theft of his dignity and the comfortable retirement he had earned. It is for these devastating, untold human dramas that we ask you to subscribe to Golden Age Files. We dedicate ourselves to preserving the sophisticated, compelling histories of the icons you love, revealing the human drama that lies beneath the silver screen. Ava Gardner, the woman who trusted too much. Ava Gardner was renowned for her untamed beauty and her passionate, turbulent life. She was a star who lived entirely on her own terms, often prioritizing experience over financial prudence. As her career matured and she spent time living abroad in Spain and London, she relied heavily on her U.S.-based legal teams to ensure her financial security. This reliance was a vulnerability that one particular legal counsel exploited ruthlessly. The lawyer was a smooth-talking man who convinced Gardner, often preoccupied with personal affairs, that he was handling complicated overseas investments on her behalf. In reality, he was systematically diverting her film residuals, endorsement payments, and cash assets. The lawyer exploited the fact that Gardner was often slow to open official U.S. mail, using her European residency as a defense for the delayed discovery of his actions. He repeatedly convinced her to sign vague documents under the guise of urgent international tax matters, which actually authorized his transfers. The theft was not discovered until the 1980s, years later, when Gardner was living in seclusion and facing mounting medical expenses. She was shocked to discover that her fortune had been significantly depleted, not by her own famous spending habits, but by the cold calculations of a man she had implicitly trusted. The scandal was especially painful for Gardner, who prided herself on being street smart. The betrayal of trust by a professional she paid to protect her finances was a deep emotional wound, forcing the proud siren of cinema to spend her final years fighting to secure her future. The necessity of fighting the case, while dealing with debilitating health issues, added an additional layer of tragic exhaustion to the last chapter of her extraordinary life. The lawyer who wrecked the Marx Brothers' laughter. The genius of the Marx Brothers lay in their magnificent, glorious chaos on screen. Groucho, Harpo, and Chico made a fortune making millions laugh. Off-screen, they were surprisingly shrewd businessmen, particularly Groucho, who was notoriously careful with his money. Yet, even the cautious Groucho, and by extension, the financial security of the entire family, was undone by a highly sophisticated legal fraud. in the 1940s, the brothers employed a prominent show business attorney who handled their contracts, royalties, and investments. The lawyer systematically established a series of shell companies that nominally existed to manage the Marx Brothers' various entertainment ventures. He then diverted payments, including royalties from their lucrative film reruns, into these shell companies, which he controlled entirely. He presented the brothers with complex, opaque financial statements designed to confuse. The attorney exploited the Marx Brothers' reliance on the legal structure of their partnerships, leveraging the fact that the brothers often kept their financial affairs separate. The money stolen included significant funds intended for the family's collective retirement fund and capital gains from real estate purchased during their cinematic heyday. The total amount stolen from the family was vast, representing a significant percentage of their post-movie earnings. When the theft was finally uncovered, the shock was profound. The men who mastered the art of making the audience feel good had been emotionally violated by a man who had feigned respect and loyalty. For Groucho, the discovery was particularly distressing, forcing him to spend years in legal proceedings, a serious and humorless affair for the great comedian. The irony was devastating. The man who exposed sham and pomp had been the victim of the most classic deception. The necessity of spending their twilight years arguing over financial crimes cast a cruel, humorless shadow over the men who had defined American comedy. Tyrone Power, the deathbed deception. Tyrone Power was one of the most handsome and beloved leading men, an icon whose premature passing in 1958, while filming Solomon and Sheba, sent shockwaves across the globe. Power had trusted this man not just with his money, but with the future of his soon-to-be-born child. The tragic and sudden nature of his passing provided a chilling opportunity for a trusted advisor to commit one of the most callous financial exploits in Hollywood history. Power had employed a personal business manager and attorney who handled his affairs. Within weeks of the star's passing from a heart attack, the attorney began systematically stripping Power's accounts and properties. He exploited the fact that Power's widow was pregnant and emotionally incapacitated by grief. The lawyer quickly moved to liquidate valuable assets, including art and real estate holdings, diverting the proceeds to his own accounts. This advisor, who was named a temporary executor, used his legal authority to rush the sale of properties without independent appraisal, claiming the estate needed immediate liquidity to cover supposed debts. His haste and the sheer volume of assets raised red flags. The man who was supposed to be guiding the family through probate became the primary beneficiary of their tragedy. The financial crime was so brazen that it was ultimately detected, but only after hundreds of thousands of dollars had been irrevocably lost. The betrayal focused a harsh, cruel spotlight on the vulnerability of Hollywood families immediately following a star's demise. It was a low act of opportunism, stealing the legacy from the arms of a grieving widow and her unborn child. The family spent years fighting not only the lawyer, but the complex legal system he exploited, simply to regain what Power had intended for his children. Lucille Ball, the betrayal of America's sweetheart. Lucille Ball was not just a star, she was a Hollywood mogul. As the head of Desilu Productions, she was the first woman to run a major television studio, and was regarded as one of the shrewdest business minds in the entertainment industry. The shock is that even this titan of business was betrayed by her own legal team. Later in her career, after the success of I Love Lucy and the sale of Desilu, Ball entrusted her personal wealth and investments to a specialized tax attorney and financial advisor. This attorney was a master of exploiting loopholes and using the star's complex financial structure against her. He wasn't stealing cash, he was attempting to seize the intellectual property rights to I Love Lucy, stealing control of the show that defined her life. The theft was not simple embezzlement, but a complex scheme to gain control over her production fortune. The lawyer utilized complex tax shelters and offshore entities to make it appear that the residual rights were being legally transferred for tax deferment purposes. Convincing Ball the maneuvers were necessary for protecting her wealth. In reality, the control was shifting directly to him. The betrayal was especially painful because it was so intricate, designed to be nearly undetectable by anyone less experienced than the lawyer himself. When Ball and her team finally discovered the duplicity, the financial and emotional battle that followed was prolonged and bitter. It forced the private, intensely protective star to expose her financial vulnerability to the courts, demonstrating that even a businesswoman as powerful as Lucille Ball could be brought low by a trusted insider. The knowledge that a portion of the beloved Lucy legacy was nearly lost to avarice was a bitter pill for Ball, leaving her intensely suspicious of even the most reputable advisors. Elizabeth Taylor, a scandal too big to bury. Elizabeth Taylor was synonymous with excess, glamour, and world-class wealth. Her finances were as complicated as her 8 marriages, involving international properties, massive film salaries, and legendary jewels. When a trusted attorney betrayed her, the scale of the theft matched the scale of her fame. The scandal unfolded in the 1990s, revealing a high-powered attorney who had been responsible for managing a large portion of Taylor's liquid assets for years. This lawyer was part of her intimate inner circle, a confidant who understood the immense pressures she faced. He leveraged her trust and the sheer volume of her transactions to systematically divert millions of dollars. The method was classic but executed on an epic scale, establishing dummy accounts and executing fraudulent stock trades that benefited only himself. The sheer complexity of Taylor's finances, spread across multiple countries due to her jet-setting lifestyle, provided the perfect cover for the massive diversions. The attorney knew Taylor would rely on his word that every complex move was simply standard practice for an international figure. When the theft was discovered, it sent a tremor through Hollywood's elite. Taylor, known for her passionate response to injustice, was emotionally wounded by the deceit. It was a humiliating public revelation that forced her to admit she had been fooled. The theft was so enormous that it threatened to liquidate funds she desperately needed for her philanthropic work and medical care. The scandal underscored a chilling truth. The greater the fame, the greater the opportunity for betrayal by those closest to the flame. The emotional toll of recovering her money during a period of serious illness was immense, adding another layer of personal struggle to the life of the already much tested star. The forgotten contract, when the lawman robbed Mr. Smith. James Stewart, the quintessential American gentleman, embodied sincerity, decency, and quiet moral strength. He lived a famously reserved life, which should have made him immune to high-stakes financial scandal. Yet his gentle, trusting nature was exactly what his betrayer exploited. Stewart employed a long-time attorney to handle his film contracts, residuals, and personal estate planning. This lawyer was not a flamboyant schemer, but a seemingly dependable man who used his access to systematically overbill Stewart for services, diverting contract payments and secretly leveraging the star's intellectual property rights for personal gain. The attorney exploited Stewart's decades-long residuals from classic films, which often involved complicated distribution deals made long ago. He fabricated expenses related to foreign distribution rights and tax filings, quietly funneling the substantial weekly income into his own accounts over 15 years. The theft was quiet and prolonged, extending over more than a decade. It was eventually uncovered by an auditor who noticed irregularities in payments from Stewart's earlier films. The revelation deeply shook Stewart, not just because of the financial loss, but because of the fundamental breach of trust. He had always believed in the decency of people, a virtue he championed on screen. To be betrayed by a man he considered a professional friend was a profound blow to his core belief system. It was the ultimate irony. The man who fought for justice in Washington was powerless against the quiet treachery of his own legal representative. The gentle star was forced to confront the harsh reality that even his quiet, moral life was not safe from the endemic corruption that sometimes lurked beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Frank Sinatra, the crooner, and the con man. Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board, valued control and fiercely protected his business interests and reputation. As a star who ran his life like a tight operation, it seems unbelievable that a single lawyer could systematically steal from him and his enterprises. Yet in the 1980s, Sinatra was the victim of a calculated legal fraud that exposed a rare moment of vulnerability. The perpetrator was a high-profile attorney specializing in celebrity finance who was entrusted with managing a large portion of Sinatra's immense personal fortune and handling his complex business partnerships. This lawyer used his position to execute complicated wire transfers and asset sales, diverting funds totaling several $1 million into foreign accounts. The lawyer managed to circumvent Sinatra's otherwise vigilant security teams by exploiting the complex trust agreements established to protect his various assets and legacies. He leveraged the paperwork, forging signatures on complex transfers between the multiple trusts, making the money appear to be moving legally. The theft was so sophisticated that it took years to trace and unravel. When the scandal broke, it was a moment of deep embarrassment for the famously controlling star. The irony was almost too much. The man whose life was rumored to brush against the criminal underworld was defeated, not by organized crime, but by a corporate lawyer in a suit. Sinatra was forced to acknowledge that he had allowed a man to get close enough to inflict profound financial damage. The episode reinforced Sinatra's already intense skepticism and mistrust, hardening him further in his later years. His friends noted that the betrayal, coming from a man of professional repute, was almost more infuriating than any challenge he had faced from the rougher elements of his past, proving that corporate avarice knew no bounds. Rita Hayworth, The Last Days of Gilda's Fortune. The life of Rita Hayworth was a beautiful, heartbreaking tapestry of exploitation. Her final years, sadly, saw her finances plundered at the exact moment she needed protection the most. As the star began her long, devastating decline due to early-onset Alzheimer's disease, her affairs fell under the control of trusted advisors. One of these legal and financial managers saw her rapidly deteriorating mental capacity not as a tragedy requiring compassion, but as an opportunity for theft. The attorney was given broad control over her remaining residuals, investments, and medical funds. He systematically siphoned off large sums of money, concealing the transactions within the mountain of medical and care expenses that were consuming her estate. The attorney fabricated invoices for inflated home care and specialized medical equipment that was never purchased, all while siphoning cash meant for her full-time nursing staff. He exploited the star's inability to remember financial details, often presenting her with documents that she could not comprehend, but signed out of habit. This was arguably the most despicable kind of betrayal, robbing a woman who was no longer capable of defending herself. The theft ensured that the last years of the great star were not just medically painful, but financially stressful for her daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, who fought fiercely to recover the money and secure her mother's care. The image of the sophisticated Gilda being stolen from in her final, vulnerable state adds a layer of profound tragedy to her already sorrowful existence. The ultimate irony was that the man entrusted to manage her memory loss was actively erasing her financial security, demonstrating the depths of human cruelty. It is moments like these, where trust is violated at a star's most vulnerable hour, that demand we pause and reflect on the true human cost of fame. We hope these revelations are providing a more complete understanding of the human cost of Hollywood's glamour. Please take a moment now to let us know which of these betrayals shocked you the most. And more importantly, what Golden Age Hollywood topic would you like us to cover next? Would you like us to explore the hidden lives of studio wives or the great unmade films of the Golden Age? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Gary Cooper, the stoic cowboy who fell for the scam. Gary Cooper was the ultimate personification of the taciturn, honorable American male. He projected a natural, easy integrity. This very integrity, however, became a vulnerability when he placed his financial affairs in the hands of a smooth, professional con artist masquerading as a lawyer. Cooper's financial life was relatively straightforward, involving his film contracts and real estate. In the 1940s, he became heavily reliant on a new financial advisor who was a master of high-level corporate exploitation. This advisor convinced Cooper to invest large sums of money in what were essentially Ponzi schemes, diverting the star's capital into the lawyer's own pocket while providing Cooper with fabricated positive financial reports. The lawyer played directly on Cooper's desire for simple, clean investments, convincing him that the complex paperwork was merely the unfortunate reality of modern finance. Cooper, a man of action, signed documents readily, allowing the lawyer to systematically bleed his accounts for nearly a decade. The theft was discovered after Cooper's passing in 1961, causing immense distress to his widow and family. The betrayal was an affront to the star's simple, honest nature. He had always preferred a handshake and a man's word, and this trusting simplicity was systematically used against him. It shattered the illusion that Cooper's inherent goodness could protect him from the cynicism and greed of the modern world. The image of the stoic cowboy was quietly devastated by the slickness of a sophisticated legal fraud. The Cooper family's legal team noted that the sophistication of the scheme, using reputable firms as fronts, made it one of the most difficult celebrity cases to unravel, highlighting the meticulous planning that went into exploiting the star's trust. The man who stole Grace. Kelly's royal dues. Grace Kelly, the coolly elegant star, who became Her Serene Highness, Princess Grace of Monaco, moved far beyond Hollywood. Yet even in the presumed safety of her royal life, her past professional earnings were not secure from betrayal. After her marriage to Prince Rainier III, her film assets, residuals, royalties, and rights were placed in the management of a specialized legal firm in the United States. One of the principal partners began to systematically intercept and divert royalty payments owed to the star from her classic films like Rear Window. The scheme involved complex international banking transactions, exploiting the movement of funds between the United States and the European Principality. The lawyer leveraged the star's distance from Hollywood, claiming high administrative and international transfer fees on her royalty payments, which he secretly kept. The theft extended even to funds intended for private, charitable works in Monaco, showing a brazen disregard for the star's public and private life. The amount stolen totaled a substantial sum, representing income meant to secure the financial independence of her children. The crime was a betrayal that crossed continents and broke the ultimate trust. The notion that a lawyer would steal from a princess was particularly shocking. The scandal was handled with immense discretion by the Monegasque Palace, but the internal investigation confirmed that the glamour of Hollywood royalty was no protection against the avarice of a trusted legal advisor. The princess, known for her composure, was reportedly devastated by the knowledge that her former professional life had been tarnished by such calculated dishonesty. Bette Davis, the scandal that almost shut down the set. Bette Davis was known for her ferocious talent and her legendary, no-nonsense control over her career. Her dedication to her craft was absolute. In the 1940s, at the height of her power, Davis was the victim of a major financial fraud orchestrated by a longtime business manager and lawyer. This betrayal occurred during a period of immense professional pressure. The attorney, entrusted with managing her investment portfolio and tax obligations, had been systematically making unauthorized sales of her stock and diverting cash flow, claiming they were necessary expenses or investment losses. The lawyer specifically targeted high-value stocks in Davis's portfolio, selling them at opportune moments and pocketing the proceeds while reporting the sale as a tax loss. This continuous depletion created the crisis, as the actress suddenly found her accessible cash reserves dangerously low. The theft led to a sudden and severe cash flow crisis that almost forced Davis to halt production on a major film. The public speculation about her solvency was deeply humiliating for the proud actress. It forced her to confront her own fragility and the realization that her obsessive focus on her career had allowed a serpent to flourish in her financial garden. Davis, the star, who demanded everyone look at her, was forced into a painful public admission of personal vulnerability. She fought the lawyer with the same acid determination she brought to her screen roles, eventually recovering a portion of her fortune. But the scars of the betrayal lingered for years. The incident forever changed how Davis managed her affairs. She became hyper-vigilant and famously mistrustful of all financial intermediaries, a professional trauma that defined her later business dealings. The last dime of the Golden Age comedy queen. The women who mastered screwball comedy brought unbridled joy to the masses, but often faced personal turmoil and financial instability. One such luminous comedian, whose lightning-fast wit and platinum blonde appeal defined the 1930s, faced financial devastation at the hands of a seemingly loyal financial attorney. This star, known for her magnetic screen presence, struggled with depression and complicated personal relationships off-screen, making her vulnerable to financial manipulation. Her lawyer, taking advantage of her emotional dependence, began systematically draining her accounts. He fabricated a series of large, unnecessary life insurance policies that named him as the primary trustee, and then borrowed against them. He also siphoned off residuals from her lucrative early films. The lawyer knew that the star's public image relied on a certain level of lavish spending, and he used this as a pretext for the constant need for cash, convincing her that large withdrawals were necessary to maintain her required lifestyle. In reality, the money was often withdrawn and immediately diverted. The loss was not merely large, it was comprehensive. When the full extent of the fraud was discovered, the star was left financially crippled, her final years marked by the indignity of having to fight for every last dollar she had earned. The theft stripped away not just her wealth, but the very security she had worked so hard to achieve. It was a heartbreaking final irony for a woman whose professional purpose was to deliver happiness. The shame of poverty, juxtaposed against her still glamorous public image, contributed significantly to the star's later reclusiveness and deep emotional pain. Katharine Hepburn, the private life and the public theft. Katharine Hepburn, the iconoclast, was fiercely protective of her privacy and chose her inner circle with meticulous care. She was known for her severe independence, managing her own affairs with New England prudence. It is this very independence that was exploited by a trusted legal advisor, making the betrayal feel profoundly personal. Hepburn had a long-term, discreet relationship with a specific law firm that managed her estate, property holdings, and contracts relating to her later career. One of the lead partners, entrusted with the deep confidence of the actress, engaged in a multi-year scheme to defraud her through misdirected investment funds. He convinced Hepburn, who often preferred to be left out of financial minutiae, to sign documents authorizing investments in fraudulent limited partnerships, funneling her cash into his own businesses. The betrayal was carried out with extreme patience. The attorney cultivated her trust over 15 years, only beginning the major thefts after he felt completely indispensable. The losses targeted funds Hepburn had set aside for the maintenance of her beloved properties and her own private retirement capital. When the fraud was finally exposed, the sheer level of access and trust that had been violated was the most painful part for Hepburn. For a woman who valued self-reliance, the revelation that someone she trusted so completely had been a wolf in sheep's clothing was a blow to her proud, careful nature. The betrayal forced her to dismantle her highly private life and enter the public court system to fight for what was hers. She remarked that the necessity of arguing about money in court felt like the ultimate violation of the quiet dignity she had worked a lifetime to achieve. The lawyer who emptied Shirley Temple's piggy bank. Shirley Temple was not just the biggest box office star of the 1930s. She was a global phenomenon whose income was astronomical. The story of her earnings is a classic example of Hollywood exploitation. As an adult, Temple, later Shirley Temple Black, discovered that despite legal protections, the massive fortune she earned as a child was not what she believed it to be. A key financial and legal advisor, who had been involved in managing the trusts established in her youth, had been systematically diverting and mismanaging large portions of her childhood earnings for decades. The star, who had transitioned from acting to a distinguished career in public service, was shocked to discover that her trusted advisor had used her funds to prop up failed ventures and had pocketed unauthorized commissions and fees. The betrayal was prolonged because the Coogan trust funds, designed to protect child actors, were so complicated that the lawyer was able to skim funds by making it appear one trust was loaning money to another, or claiming massive, non-existent expenses for property management. The betrayal here was not just of an adult, but of the little girl who had worked tirelessly to earn that money. It was the ultimate theft of innocence, exploiting the earnings of a child whose smile was meant to be protected. Temple Black spent years pursuing legal action, ensuring that the legacy of all child stars was protected from similar exploits. She fought with the determination of an adult protecting a child, herself, turning her painful discovery into powerful advocacy for financial transparency in the entertainment industry. If you've been moved by the humanity and the tragedy within these stories, please help us preserve this history by liking and sharing this video. Your support ensures that the full, complex truth of the Golden Age continues to shine.
Yes, Papa Jack, I will.
The fixer who bankrupted the Gish sisters. Lillian and Dorothy Gish were two of the most revered figures in cinema, true pioneers whose work spanned decades. They were known for their close sisterly bond and their dignified management of their lives. For years, their combined personal finances and estate planning were managed by a single, highly influential entertainment lawyer who gained their absolute confidence. This attorney, leveraging the complexity of managing assets, engaged in a brazen scheme of exploitation. He systematically sold off valuable portions of their intellectual property rights and film ownership stakes without their full knowledge, pocketing the proceeds. The lawyer specifically targeted the rights to their silent film catalog, assets whose true value only increased with time. He sold the ownership to companies he controlled for pennies on the dollar, claiming the rights were obsolete or failing to generate income. The loss was devastating, impacting the sisters' ability to fund their later philanthropic efforts and secure their final years. When the betrayal was finally uncovered, the emotional impact was acute, as it struck at the center of their tightly knit family unit. The Gish, sisters who had weathered every storm, were deeply hurt by the knowledge that their trust had been so completely violated. It was a dual betrayal that proved even the most esteemed veterans of the screen were vulnerable to the avarice of those they paid to protect them. The sisters, having spent decades defending the integrity of cinema, were devastated to learn their own artistic legacy had been sold off piece by piece by a trusted fixer. Lana Turner. The glamour, the guilt, and the empty vault. Lana Turner was the epitome of Hollywood glamour, living a public life often marked by sensational drama and deep personal pain. Her finances were frequently in disarray, a vulnerability that a predatory lawyer expertly targeted. In the 1970s, during a turbulent period, Turner relied heavily on a new financial manager and attorney to navigate tax issues and manage her remaining film residuals. This advisor used her emotional distress and her reputation for chaotic personal finance to conceal his own calculated exploits. He convinced Turner to sign over control of a significant portion of her film contract rights, claiming it was for tax efficiency. In reality, he simply began collecting the residuals for himself. The lawyer exploited Turner's reputation for high spending, claiming that her dwindling accounts were due to her lifestyle, thereby deflecting suspicion from his systematic theft of her incoming film payments. He sold off her film rights in large blocks, convincing her the transactions were necessary to cash out assets quickly. The theft occurred at a time when Turner was already financially fragile, compounding her personal guilt and contributing to her feelings of insecurity. The full extent of the theft was not uncovered until years later, leaving the star to deal with both the shame of the public revelation and the profound financial damage. For Lana Turner, the constant betrayal seemed to be the inescapable price of her immense fame. The psychological weight of the financial ruin, piled atop years of personal turmoil, only deepened her isolation in the final chapters of her life. Errol Flynn, the final reckless account. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling rogue of Hollywood, lived a life of flamboyant excess that was often financially reckless. He spent his fortunes as fast as he earned them. But the final destructive blow to his estate was delivered not by his own extravagance, but by the cynical actions of his trusted attorney. In his final, troubled years, Flynn placed his affairs in the hands of a lawyer who saw the star's chaotic lifestyle as the perfect cover for embezzlement. He was the only person who successfully navigated the great adventurer's complex web of contracts to systematically steal his final, fragile assets. The lawyer, responsible for managing Flynn's remaining assets and his complex tax obligations, systematically stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from the actor. He convinced Flynn that his dwindling funds were due entirely to his own famous consumption, allowing the lawyer's crime to hide in plain sight. The attorney used the star's nomadic lifestyle to his advantage, setting up transactions that required only remote signing and fabricating urgent invoices for back taxes and foreign legal fees, which Flynn, in his declining health, could not properly vet. Flynn passed away suddenly in 1959, leaving behind a tangled web of debt and confusion. The lawyer's betrayal only emerged posthumously, revealing that the great adventure star's poverty in his final days was not entirely self-inflicted. The lawyer's final, cold, calculated act was to steal from the star's widow and young children, an ending that served as the bitter, final synthesis of the golden age betrayal. The star who gave the world dreams had his reality reduced to a series of empty bank statements and violated trusts. The ultimate discovery confirmed that even a man who lived outside the rules could be exploited by those who merely mastered them. These 22 stories represent a profound contradiction at the heart of Hollywood's golden age. The men and women who brought us laughter, tears, and eternal glamour were often powerless when facing the quiet, cold treachery of their own legal advisors. The betrayal was not simply about money. It was a violation of the most fundamental professional faith. These lawyers and financial managers were granted access not just to their clients' bank accounts, but to their deepest insecurities, family trusts, and vulnerabilities. When the betrayal came, it often struck at the star's weakest point. Judy Garland's emotional fragility, Gary Cooper's simple trust, or Rita Hayworth's tragic illness. The psychological toll of these financial exploits was often more devastating than the monetary loss. It fueled the isolation, depression, and professional paranoia that plagued many of these icons in their later years. Imagine the shame Bette Davis felt, the humiliation endured by Marlene Dietrich, or the heartbreak of John Wayne. All icons of strength brought to their knees by the cunning of a trusted associate. Yet, as with the personal secrets we have explored before, these betrayals offer a different kind of insight into the stars we revere. We see their resilience in fighting back, their determination to regain their dignity, and their ability to transform their painful experience into legal and philanthropic action that protected others. The stars of the Golden Age shine no less brightly for having been revealed as complex, flawed human beings who were, in the end, susceptible to the same greed that touches every corner of human endeavor. Knowing that these legends were betrayed by the very people they paid to protect them only deepens our appreciation for the fortitude it took to maintain that dazzling smile on the silver screen. As the curtain falls on these 22 painful revelations, we are left with a deeper admiration for the icons of the Golden Age. They faced down the most sophisticated villains on screen, yet found their greatest betrayal came from the men they paid to protect them. Their resilience in the face of this deceit is perhaps their most enduring performance. If you found yourself moved by the humanity beneath the glamour, please join our growing family of classic cinema enthusiasts. By subscribing to Golden Age Files right now, don't let these histories be lost to time. And before you go, share this video with a fellow admirer and tell us in the comments what forgotten Hollywood story you want us to illuminate next. We thank you for cherishing the full, complex truth of these legends. Until the next journey into history, we bid you farewell.